Requests came in like food delivery, ping, location, name. I got one from far lot I hated because the lights flickered. The profile photo was blank, but that happened. I grabbed my vest, radio, and started walking, annoyed more than scared. It was finals week, cold enough to make your teeth hurt, and I already had that sour feeling like somebody was going to waste my time for nothing. The school sold the escort thing like we were security. We weren't. We were broke students in a neon vest with a radio that barely worked and a stupid app that made everyone feel safer on paper. The path to that lot cut behind the dorms with a nice light stop. You go from bright sidewalks and windows full of people to this darker strip of trees and parked cars where sound dies. My boots hit grit and old salt. The radio sat on my chest like a toy. Every now and then it popped with static like it wanted to remind me it could make noise without actually helping. I reached the lot and nobody stood by the call box. I waited, checked the app, saw a client approaching. I stood under the nearest pole light because that's what they train you to do, like light is some magic force field. The pole buzzed and then dipped dim for a second. I watched the rows of cars and tried to pick out a moving shape. The lot was big enough to swallow someone. There were dead angles everywhere, between trucks, behind dumpsters, past the far fence where the cameras didn't reach. My stomach started doing that tight twist where your body knows before your brain does. Then a guy stepped out from between cars and raised his phone like he was filming. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He just moved closer, slow, like he wanted me to decide to come to him. He held the phone up high, steady, like it mattered to get a clean shot of me in my vest and my badge. No lockbox, no keys in his hand. No, hey yeah, I'm the request. Just that phone and that slow walk. I backed toward the light pole and told him to stop. I didn't sound tough. I sounded pissed and shaky at the same time, which is a miserable combo. He kept coming anyway, not rushing, not stumbling drunk, just controlled, like he knew the distance and he was closing it on purpose. Another shape shifted behind a pickup, then another. 3 people total, spaced out, boxing the lot like they'd rehearsed it. That's when my head went cold. It wasn't just some weird guy. It was a setup. They weren't standing together. They weren't talking. They were placed. One near the truck, one closer to the call box, one further back like a plug in the exit. My radio hissed. No dispatcher voice. Just dead air. I pressed the talk button and said my location anyway, because that's what you do when your hands need something to do. Nothing came back. Just static and that hollow silence after, like the channel was open but nobody was there. I tried again. Same thing. My throat went dry. I could hear my own breathing too loud inside my hood. My phone showed escort canceled, and then new request from the same lot, same blank profile, like someone was spamming the system to keep me there. That pissed me off so hard it almost shoved the fear aside. The app wasn't supposed to do that. You weren't supposed to be able to keep firing requests from the same spot like a broken doorbell. But it happened right there in my hand, like the system was helping them. The guy with the phone tilted it a little, tracking me as I backed up. His face stayed flat. No esmai, no anger. Just that blank focus. And the other 2 didn't rush either. They started to drift, small steps, cutting off angles without looking dramatic. Like they didn't need to scare me. Like they just needed me to be in the right place. I ran. Not heroic, not tactical. Just sprinted for the emergency blue light tower. I already knew where it was because I'd walked this side of campus enough times to count the towers like landmarks. The closest one sat near the edge of the lot, half hidden by a tree, the blue cap barely visible unless you knew to look. I heard footsteps immediately, sharp slaps on asphalt, and I knew I made the right call because nobody chases you by accident. The first guy lunged and grabbed my vest strap. The yank at my throat, and for a second my breath just stopped like somebody hit an off switch. I reacted ugly. I twisted and drove my elbow back. I felt it connect with something hard, bone, teeth, I don't know, and I kept moving. My vest strap tore my neck. The guy made a sound that wasn't pain exactly. It was anger, like I'd broken the script. He shouted something, loud now, and I heard the other feet closing from behind. Not all from one direction either. That's what made it worse. It wasn't just pursuit. It was pressure. They were trying to funnel me away from the light and back into the dark pockets between cars. My radio crackled again, like it was mocking me. Still no voice. Just hiss. I could see the blue tower ahead, and it felt stupid that my whole survival depended on reaching a pole with a button, like I was in some bad training video. I hit the blue tower button, and the siren erupted. The lot lit up. The strobe flashed hard enough to make the cars look like they were jumping. The sound was violent, high, and constant, the kind that makes your teeth ring. Across the street, dorm windows snapped on. Doors opened. People leaned out. Somebody yelled, but it blended into the siren. The three shapes scattered fast, like roaches under kitchen light. The guy with the phone dropped his arm and bolted between cars. One of the others peeled away toward the far fence. The third ran straight out of the lot like he'd already picked his route. They didn't hesitate. They didn't check on each other. They just vanished because whatever they were doing required darkness and privacy, not a screaming tower and witnesses. I stayed by the pole, shaking like an idiot, staring at the gaps between cars like they might pop back out the second the siren stopped. My hands wouldn't unclench. My throat burned where the strap had cut me. My elbow throbbed. I kept tasting that copper panic taste in the back of my mouth. When the police finally rolled in, they walked it like it was a minor annoyance. Flashlights under bumpers. Questions in that bored voice. Did I know them? Did they touch me? Did I maybe misread the situation? I showed them the app screen with the cancel and a new request from the same lot. I pressed my radio button so they could hear the dead hiss. One officer shrugged like broken gear was normal. They took a report and told me to be careful. That line sat in my chest like a rock. Be careful, as if I'd been skipping through the dark, singing to myself. As if the equipment hadn't failed right when I needed it. As if the whole program wasn't built on students doing the dirty part, while administrators got to claim improved safety metrics. The program director blamed tech issues. He didn't say sorry. He didn't ask what the guys looked like. He asked if I'd followed protocol, like protocol mattered when 3 people were moving around you in a dark lot. He implied, softly, politely, that maybe I escalated it by running, like staying would have been more professional. I wanted to tell him to go stand in Lot J alone and see how professional he felt. 2 days later, I saw a new admin email. The escort app vendor had been updated, and all escort schedules were now visible to authorized partners. No list of who the partners were. That email made my stomach drop harder than the night itself, because it was written like a feature, like a benefit. Coordination, transparency, efficiency. It didn't say who could see our routes now, or why anybody outside the program needed that. It didn't say who approved it. It just said it happened. I emailed back asking who the partners were. I got a one-line reply about improving coordination with campus stakeholders. Stakeholders. Like I wasn't a person who got grabbed in a dark lot. Like the guys with the phone and the dead radio were just a minor hiccup. After that, I started treating every request like it could be a trap without letting myself look paranoid. I screenshotted everything. I stopped accepting far lot calls unless dispatch confirmed a name twice, and half the time dispatch didn't even answer. I kept my phone in my hand instead of my pocket. I watched for blank profile photos and repeat pings like they meant something. I walked like I was already late, because moving fast felt safer than moving polite. But the thing I couldn't shake was how smooth it was. Not chaotic, not random. The fake request, the client approaching lie, the dead radio at the exact moment I needed a voice, the app canceling and re-requesting like a thumb held down on my neck. 3 people positioned like they'd done it before. One filming like he needed proof of something. My face, my badge, my panic, maybe just a record that I showed up where the schedule said I'd be. I still think about how clean it was. Fake request, dead radio, 3 bodies in the dark. That wasn't random. That was a test run. Most calls were bullshit, psychics, exes, drunks. Then a man started calling nightly, calm, giving coordinates like he was reading a grocery list. Check the culvert by mile 12. Look behind the billboard base. Every time, deputies found something. A shoe, a phone case, a torn hoodie. Nothing that solved anything, just enough to keep the case bleeding. I sat in that cramped room with the bad chairs and the humming monitors, and I started to dread the clock more than the actual calls, because this one wasn't random noise. He always came in around the same time. He never asked if I could hear him. He never tested me. He just dropped the location and waited like he already knew what would happen next. The shoe wasn't tossed on the shoulder. It was wedged where somebody had to bend down and look. The phone case wasn't in the open. It was tucked where wind and foot traffic wouldn't touch it. The hoodie was ripped in a way that looked like someone yanked it hard, not like it got snagged by a branch. Each find went into the system, got tagged, got forwarded, got kicked to detectives, and then the whole thing would stall again. No body, no suspect, no clean timeline, just scraps. Enough to keep families calling back. Enough to keep the news team sniffing around. Enough to keep the file from closing. I flagged the pattern. I didn't do it like some wannabe profiler either. I wrote it like a boring office memo. Same caller cadence, consistent directional language, consistent recovery results, escalating specificity. I attached call times. I attached incident numbers. I attached everything so nobody could say I was guessing. Detectives told me to keep taking the calls and stop playing profiler. Fine. I swallowed it because you learn fast that stay in your lane is code for shut up and feed the machine. The next call came in and the man corrected me when I mispronounced a street name. I hadn't said the street name out loud. I just looked at it on my screen and my brain tripped over the spelling and I said it wrong. And he cut in immediately, clean, like he was reading over my shoulder. Then he said, casual as anything, and don't mark that witness as cooperative. You already wrote she's unreliable. He said unreliable exactly how I typed it earlier in the shift, in a private note, in a section the public can't see and patrol usually doesn't touch. My hand stopped. My mouth went dry. For a second, I forgot how to breathe like a normal person. I asked him to repeat the location like it was a normal call because my brain wanted time. He repeated it slowly, like he enjoyed dragging it out. When he hung up, I stared at the case file and felt this ugly, sinking certainty crawl up my spine. He wasn't guessing. He was reading my screen. I ran a trace the way I'd been trained. I wasn't supposed to do it myself, not officially, but I didn't care about official anymore. The number bounced through a VoIP chain, then landed on a local endpoint for half a second. A building across town. Our building. The same damn address. I blinked at it like it would change if I stared hard enough. It didn't. I printed the call log because paper still feels like reality when everything else turns slippery. I printed the trace result. I printed the timestamp. I grabbed it all and marched it to my supervisor. He didn't look surprised. That was the part that messed me up the most. He looked irritated. He glanced at the page for maybe 3 seconds, then snapped at me for wasting paper and told me to shred it. He reached for the page like it belonged to him, like proof was an inconvenience. I pulled it back, and my voice came out sharper than I meant, and I told him no. He leaned forward and talked low, that tight, controlled anger people use when they don't want witnesses. He said I was getting paranoid. He said I was going to cause a panic. He said I needed to stop digging and just do my job. I asked him why the hell he wasn't treating this like an emergency. He didn't answer that. He just pointed at the shred bin again, like it was a command. That's when I knew I wasn't in a normal workplace problem. This was an IT glitch territory. This was people choosing what gets seen and what gets buried. I didn't shred shit. I folded the papers, stuffed them in my bag, and left before my hands did something dumb. In the hallway, I kept checking reflections in the glass like I'd catch someone behind me. On the way out, my badge still worked. Green light, normal beep. The door opened like nothing was wrong. Outside, the air felt too open, like the building had been squeezing me and I didn't realize it. I drove home, gripping the wheel hard enough to make my wrist ache. My phone rang from unknown halfway there. It didn't ring normally. It buzzed once, then stopped, and a voicemail hit without a ring. I pulled over because I didn't trust my legs not to shake. It was that same calm voice, no filter this time, telling me my apartment number and what time I usually park. He mentioned the spot I pick when it's open, the one near the far light, and he mentioned the way I angle in because my passenger door sticks. Then it played a short clip of me answering the tip line, my own voice looping like a joke, bright and professional and dead inside. Hearing myself like that made my stomach flip. It meant he had access to recordings. It meant he had access to more than my screen. It meant he could grab me, copy me, replay me, and I'd never even know until it showed up in my lap. I sat there with my phone in my hand and felt this hot, stupid panic build in my chest. I didn't call the police because I was the police, or at least I worked inside that world, and I just watched my supervisor try to erase proof with a shredder like it was routine. I went home and checked my door twice. I checked my windows. I walked my apartment like I'd never been in it before. I tried to sleep and couldn't. Every little sound turned into a footstep in my head. I kept picturing someone behind me, just out of view, watching the way I moved through a room. The next morning, my badge didn't work. I still went in because some part of me thought I could force a confrontation, force someone to admit what was happening if I showed up in person. The reader flashed red. I swiped again. Red. A guard looked up like I was just another minor problem and told me to go to HR. HR pulled up my file and told me, like she was reading a weather report, that I resigned. She showed me the email. It came from my account, sent overnight. It was written in this clean, polite tone I don't use, full of effective immediately and thank you for the opportunity. My name sat at the bottom like a neat little bow. I told her I didn't send it. She gave me that looked like she'd already decided which story was easier. She said access was terminated, and if I wanted to dispute it, I could submit a request. Submit a request to the same system I couldn't log into. I asked to talk to IT. She said IT was aware. I asked if there'd been a breach. She said she couldn't discuss internal matters. I asked if my supervisor approved it. She didn't answer directly, but her eyes flicked to her screen and back, and that told me enough. I walked out of there feeling hollow, like someone had scooped my insides out and left the skin moving out of habit. In the parking lot, I tried to log into my work email. Invalid credentials. I tried the dispatch portal. Locked. I tried anything that might show me what had happened overnight. Locked. It wasn't just that I couldn't get into my job. It was that someone could step into my account or my name, send a resignation, and the whole building would accept it because it made the problem go away. I sat in my car and stared at the place I'd spent so many nights in, that big concrete box full of screens and radios and people who claim they're here to help. All I could think was, if he could read my screen, he could read everything. If he could speak with my voice, he could make me say anything. And if my supervisor was already trying to shred the trail, then this wasn't one bad caller. This was inside. It was baked into the place. I went home and kept the printed log in a drawer like it was a weapon I didn't know how to use. I stopped answering unknown numbers. I changed passwords until my fingers cramped. I still caught myself listening for that calm voice in every quiet moment, like it might leak through the walls the way it leaked through the phone. The cases kept moving without me, because cases always move even if they don't go anywhere. People kept calling because people always call, and I was out, erased in one night like I'd never sat there taking those calls at all. The next morning, my badge didn't work. HR said I quit by email overnight. The email came from my account. I never got back into that system to see what else he'd been reading. The basement was all heat and bleach and rattling wheels. One cart came down sealed with zip ties, which wasn't normal. I cut them because the scanner needed the tag, and the smell hit me, sweet, stale, wrong. Not blood, not shit, something old and kept. I just stood there a second, cutters hanging open like my body needed permission to move. Basement air is usually detergent, wet cardboard, and hot dust off motors. This was perfume and rot, like somebody sprayed something over something else and hoped no one would notice. The zip ties were cinched right across the barcode too, Not sloppy, not accidental. Whoever did it wanted the cart to land in front of someone who'd cut the seal to keep the line moving. Me, inside the cart, under folded sheets, sat a hard plastic storage bin with a taped lid. Not hospital property. No sticker, no sharp a label, nothing. Just a store bin wrapped in packing tape until the lid looked welded on. Somebody tucked it under clean sheets like it was precious. That made my skin prickle. In the basement, precious is never good. I popped it and found phones. Dozens. All cheap models, all with cracked screens, all wiped clean except for one thing, the camera roll. It was nothing but photos of sleeping women, hospital gowns for tape, wristbands visible. Some shots were close enough to read names. Some were taken from inside rooms, angled low, like whoever did it crouched behind equipment. The phones were all set up the same way. No contacts, no texts, no apps besides the basic stuff. Like they'd been bought, used for one thing, then dumped in the bin. Some still had little bits of screen protector peeling at the corners. One had a sticky note residue on the back, like it had been tagged. My thumb kept sliding like I was trying to prove it wasn't real. I recognized our curtains, our bed rails. One photo had the unit whiteboard in the background with the date still on it. Another caught a monitor corner with the timestamp in the top bar, after midnight. The angles made my skin crawl. Not selfies. Not oops, wrong photo. It was hiding level low, like a creep peeking from behind a four-pole. In one shot, a nurse's hand was adjusting tubing, totally unaware someone else was squatting 2 feet away taking pictures. In another, the flash reflected off a face shield hanging on a hook, like the person had the nerve to stand there and use it as cover. Under the phones was a binder, printouts of staff schedules, circled names, notes like floats nights, parts alone, no ring. Whoever made it didn't just creep patients. They stalked staff. That binder made everything snap into focus. This wasn't just sick trophies. This was planning. The schedule grid was ours, the exact template the charge prints every week. Names I knew were circled like targets. Notes weren't about staffing. They were about habits. Who takes the late bus? Who smokes by the dock? Who uses the stairwell at 0300? Who walks out without a ride? It read like a guy building a route. There were extra pages too, little scraps with door codes half scribbled, a list of badge colors and which ones got you through which doors, written like somebody tested them. There was even a page that looked like a map of the unit, arrows and little marks by the supply room and the staff bathroom. I shut the lid, retaped it, and hauled the bin out of the basement. I didn't want to leave it down there where anyone could grab it back. The cartwheels squealed and echoed off the concrete. I kept expecting a hand to grab my shoulder. A couple times I heard another cart rattle somewhere and my whole body locked up. When the freight elevator doors finally opened, I jammed the bin in and rode up with my back to the wall, watching the camera dome like it was the only witness I had. Upstairs, the hospital sounded normal. Call bells, overhead pages, that constant beeping that never stops. That normal sound pissed me off because it meant the place could keep running while this existed underneath it. I took the longest route to the nurse's station on purpose, staying in the brighter halls where people could see me. I hated how paranoid I felt, but the smell from the bin kept clinging to my hands and reminding me I wasn't imagining anything. I hauled the bin upstairs to the charge desk. The nurse on duty stared, then told me to put it back because security hates drama. She tried to close the lid like she could shut the whole thing away. I told her to look. She peeked, her face flickered, then she slammed it shut and started talking policy. Unlocked property, procedures, write-ups. Like the real emergency was my hands on the lid. She kept glancing around like she wanted witnesses, like she wanted the moment to turn into this guy overreacted instead of someone is stalking women. She even tried to pull the bin toward her side of the desk, like she was taking custody just to take control of the story. I lost my temper and snapped that someone was collecting women like fucking trading cards. She told me I'd get fired for chain of custody. Cool. I called security anyway. She planted her palm on the lid like she could physically keep it from existing. When I dialed, She hissed that I was making a situation. I stepped back so she couldn't grab my phone. I told security to get there now. While we waited, she tried everything. Soft voice, hard voice, guilt about admin, fear about our unit getting blamed. Handle it. Put it back. Let it go. I told her no. I told her those wristbands had names, and I wasn't going to be another guy who looked away because paperwork is scary. She kept saying chain of custody like it was a magic phrase that turned this into my fault instead of whoever packed the bin. 30 minutes later, a supervisor I'd never met showed up smiling too hard and asked me where I found it, like he needed to learn the path. His hands were clean. His shoes were dry. Basement jobs leave marks. He had none. He leaned in like we were sharing a secret, not reporting a crime. I could smell mint on his breath, like he'd just brushed his teeth before showing up. Nobody who's been downstairs for an hour has mint breath. He didn't ask what was on the phones. He asked what elevator I used, what hallway I walked, who saw me, whether I cut the zip ties myself. His questions felt like he was mapping my route, so he could plug the leak. He hovered close to the bin but never opened it, like he already knew what he'd see. He kept saying, just for documentation, but his smile didn't move his eyes. And he kept trying to get me to say it was my idea to open it, like he wanted that sentence on record. When the uniformed officers finally came, the supervisor tried to call it unclaimed property and misplaced devices. I told them to open the camera roll. One officer scrolled a few seconds and went dead-faced. The other stopped moving altogether, like his brain needed a reset. Nobody laughed. Nobody shrugged it off. The charge nurse suddenly got quiet, staring at the floor like she could disappear. They pulled us into a side room and took statements. I told them about the smell, the zip ties, the photos taken inside patient rooms, the binder notes about staff. The charge nurse tried to steer it back to procedure, said schedules were public. I said the grid is public, sure. No ring isn't public. Parts alone isn't public. That's stalking. The supervisor stood by the door the whole time, checking the hallway every time someone walked past, like he was more worried about who might overhear than what was in the bin. They bagged the phones and binder, photographed the bin, and asked who had basement access. I told them, too many. Maintenance, supply, transport, security, nurses cutting through, anyone who knows which doors don't latch right. Hospitals act locked, but they leak, and whoever built that binder knew every leak. The officer asked if I'd touched the phones. I said, yeah, I had to. I didn't know what it was until I saw it. He wrote it down like a sin. Before they let me go, someone, security, I don't even know who, told me not to start rumors. Like the danger was gossip. I nodded because I wanted out of there. My hands wouldn't stop shaking and my mouth tasted like copper. I clocked out sick without asking permission and walked out through the employee entrance like I was sneaking. Outside, the employee lot felt too open. I checked my back seat before I got in, which is something I'd never done in my life. I sat there with the doors locked, breathing hard, staring at the dark windows of the building like it could stare back. I kept thinking about those low angles, those hidden shots, and how easy it would be for someone to start taking pictures of me. I drove home with my rearview mirror tilted down because I couldn't stand seeing headlights behind me. That night, after statements, I went to my car and found a hospital wristband tucked under my wiper with my own name printed on it. I hadn't been a patient. I just worked there.